if there is anything I can do to try and help customers out here, and I don't see what good
I'm very
is
late to the
accomplished
party.
by me
He's
just
live streaming,
sitting
and I was not
lost,
there.
you know,
I was here,
you
but I
know,
could
in a
not stream
room
it. But now I
pretending the
can.
outside world doesn't exist.
You're in the Bahamas right now. Are you in the Bahamas because you think you can't leave?
No, I'm in the Bahamas. I have been in the Bahamas for the last year, and I've been running FTX from the Bahamas. I've been running FTX Digital Market, our primary operating entity down here. With Bahamian regulators and and others in contact. And right now, I'm looking to be helpful anywhere I can with any of the global entities that that would want my help.
Do you think you could come to the United States or go elsewhere?
He is live streaming, guys. That's what is going on.
Have you thought about doing that?
I've thought about it, and I've seen a lot of the obviously a lot of the hearings that have been happening. I would not be surprised if sometime I am up there talking about what happened to our representatives, or wherever else is most appropriate.
How concerned are you about criminal liability at this point?
So I don't think that, obviously I don't personally think that I have, but I think the real answer is that's not, it sounds weird to say, but I think the real answer is that's not what I'm focusing on. It's, there's going to be a time and a place for me to sort of think about myself and my own future, but I don't think this is it. Like, right now, look, I've had a bad month. This has not been a fun month for me, but that's not what matters here. Like, what matters here is the millions of customers. What matters here is all the stakeholders in FTX who got hurt, and trying to do everything I can to help them out. And as long as that's the case, like, I don't think that what happens with me is the important part of that, and I don't think that's what it makes sense for me to be focusing on.
Sam, help me with this. On November 7th, you tweeted and then deleted a tweet that said, quote, FTX has enough to cover all client holdings. We don't invest client assets, even treasuries. Yep. We've been processing all withdrawals and will continue to be, unquote. You then deleted that tweet. And literally just moments ago, you told me it was on November 7th that things took a turn.
Yep.
You telling the truth?
So things.
What just happened? I think my OBS is crashing. Guys, I'm not so sure what's happening. Sam Bankman-Fried hacking my computer. Let's see. Not sure what's going on, guys. I'm not sure why I'm having trouble. Uh-huh.
Because you had told the Senate, so you were sitting in the Senate at the time, on February 9th, 2022. Was that true?
Yes, and again, FTX US, to my knowledge, totally solvent. FTX US derivatives, totally solvent.
What happened?
And in
I don't
fact,
know.
I believe FTX US derivatives, Ledger X, may even be up and running right now. I'm confused why FTX US is not processing customer withdrawals right now. I would think it should be, because I believe, to my knowledge, that it could be and could make all Americans 100% whole from this. So and FTX US derivatives, as I said there, doesn't even allow leverage of any sort. It was close to a spot trading platform. And so, yeah, to my knowledge, all American customers and all American regulated businesses and exchanges here are, I think, at least in terms of client assets, are okay. Obviously, I don't know what's happened with, you can make your own judgments about the enterprise value of those businesses, but.
Over the summer, you paid a $2.5 billion loan to Barry Silbert's Genesis. This was in August. And I was just trying to think through the dynamics of what might have been happening at your firm and was wondering, where did the money come from?
So when you say you did that, I presume that that's Alameda Research that did that? Is that right?
Yes, yeah. That's the case.
So I don't have all of the details there, but my understanding is that, and I don't know exactly what was going on Genesis's side then, and I don't know now, but my understanding is I believe Genesis tried to call in a large number of loans from Alameda. I believe that happened, and that closed down a lot of positions that Alameda had open with Genesis and other trading desks. And that was what I was thinking at the time. And that's, I think, what happened there. I also think that may have led to an increase of position size of Alameda on FTX in retrospect.
Right. You did an interview, I think perhaps inadvertently, over Twitter DMs with a reporter at Vox, and had spoken about ESG, but also about what you described as the shibboleths of what it meant to look good in corporate America today. And that a lot of the things that you were doing were not necessarily things you actually believed or believed in. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, absolutely. And it was a frustrating experience. It was not meant to be a public interview. It was a longtime friend of mine who I stupidly forgot was also a reporter. I thought I was speaking in a personal capacity. I'm not sure what they thought the capacity was at the time, but it certainly ended up being reported on. And, I think what I'd say is, look, there are a lot of things that I think have really massive impact on the world. And ultimately, that's what I care about the most. And I mean, I think frankly that the blockchain industry could have substantial positive impact. But, I was thinking a lot about, bed nets and malaria, about, saving people from diseases no one should die from, about animal welfare, about pandemic prevention, and, what could be done on large scale to help mitigate those things. I think matter, and they're among the most important things to me. Separately from that, there's a bunch of bullshit that regulated companies do to try and look good, and these are things that everyone who does them basically knows they're kind of dumb. That these are not things that are making large impact on the world. These are not looking at saving thousands of lives. These are the kind of if like 3 different quarterbacks throw a touchdown in the same game for the same team, we'll donate 2 used cars to charity type campaigns where it's
Do you
not
guys
gonna
think
happen.
he's
It's
being
never
honest
happened.
with his
There's
main
no
proponents?
expectation
This
of
is
the money
all
being donated.
not relevant.
It's just a PR campaign, sort of masquerading.
He's basically
as do-gooderism.
explaining his own
Things
shkabam.
like greenwashing are things which I think
All
end up
PR.
in a somewhat similar area.
Fair to say you participated in this?
Yeah, we all did, and FTX did as well. And there are things I felt like we needed to do for the business. There are things that I felt like were crucial for us being able. I mean, I wish the world didn't work this way. I wish that these weren't relevant to your ability to get regulated, to your ability to get bank accounts, but they were. And yeah, you know, we had promotional campaigns, we had you know, marketing slogans, and you know, we thought about what we could do to, and you know, we thought of ourselves as legitimately trying to do good, but we also thought about what we could do to make sure that our image reflected that. And there's a lot of just unimpactful things there that ultimately I think in some circles got more attention than actually impactful things. And you know, I think that on the more tasteful end of the spectrum, you can see, you know, things like small scale but real charitable initiatives. And on, I think, the less tasteful end of the spectrum, you know, frankly speaking, I mean, I think even things like, you know, making sure that all materials have perfect English grammar is a thing where that was important.
Sam, let me ask you about this, though, because the other piece of it is using your money and influence, and I think there's a question about whose money you were using, but to donate, for example, to the Democratic Party.
That's a good
in
question.
large part to influence regulation. And I think as people have looked through now some of the regulation you were pushing for at Sbf, for example, some of that regulation would have allowed you, frankly, to, quote, self-certify a lot of what was going on at FTX. And there are people who look at that and say it was all part of a scheme.
Good question.
I mean, on the second piece of that, when you look at like the CFTC regulation there, ultimately there may have been an ability to self-certify contracts, but prior to that, we went through a congressional hearing, a public comment period, a public roundtable, a year of inquiries, and tens of thousands of hours, you know, thousands of pages of submitted documents, and still had not gotten to the point of having a license to offer emergent futures in the United States. And so it was an extraordinarily long and hard process that we were going through with the CFTC. And you know, it was by far the most intensive regulatory process that I'd ever seen.
Can you speak to the lobbying piece of it, though?
Yeah.
And the donations piece of it? Because I think that's become part of the story as to whether you effectively were influencing lawmakers to do your bidding. And given the state of your current company, questions about whether that should be the case.
So, I mean, lawmakers were not ruling on FTX. FTX didn't have an application before Congress for anything. You know, my donations were mostly for pandemic prevention, and they were looking at primary elections where there were candidates who were outspoken in favor of doing things now to prevent the next pandemic. That was the primary thing that I was supporting with those contributions. And, you know, it was on both sides of the aisle, primarily operating in both primaries, because I wasn't viewing it as a partisan exercise. I was not, you know, most of this was not looking at donating to one party to beat the other one in the general elections here. You know, it was, not only was it on both sides, but even within each side, it was between two candidates in the same party, and it was looking at pandemic policy.
Where did the money come from for those donations?
So, you know, basically profits. I mean, you know, it was substantially smaller than the, you know, amount of trading profits that Alameda had made over the prior few years.
Related to this, you had a meeting with Gary Gensler. You also met with folks at Sbf.
There we go.
Do you think you needed to buy your way into those meetings?
These are good questions. Wow.
I mean, I don't think I need to buy my way into them. I do think it was harder than I would have thought it would be to get to the point of being even able to have meetings, with some regulators. And I mean, I spent hundreds of hours, probably thousands of hours in DC trying to get to the point where I could even have meetings with some of the relevant regulators. But that wasn't a money thing. And I mean, there's no donations to Gary Gensler's. He doesn't even have a campaign to donate to in the first place. That was like elbow grease. I mean, that was just asking again and again and again to have meetings with relevant regulators and submitting hundreds and thousands of pages of documents.
You also made big investments in a number of media companies, and I think that's raised a lot of questions about whether you were trying to buy influence. Can you speak to that?
I mean, I think media matters a lot, and I want to support good media ventures. That was the whole thesis there. And, I don't have like governance over any of these. I wasn't looking for governance over them. I was looking to support journalists doing great work because I think what they do is really important. There needs to be a critical eye on stories. I'm certainly seeing, being on the getting the brunt of a lot of that right now. And, frankly, I think it's healthy for the world that there is real investigative journalism.
Your parents are law professors. What did you tell them when all of this happened?
I mean, I don't remember exactly when I reached out to them, but, I think I called them up and said, hey, guys, I think there might be a problem. Like, things, looks like Alameda's position might be imploding here, and there might be liquidity issues, and I'll tell you more when I know more. That's my guess about roughly what I said, but honestly, that week so much happened. It's a little bit of a blur to me exactly what was said.
And what are they telling you now?
And look, it's been a hard period for anyone who was close to me, and none of them deserved that. And I feel really, look, like a lot of, obviously, the largest number of people who were hurt here were customers, and I feel incredibly bad about that. But anyone who was close to me, including my parents, including employees, coworkers who fought with the company to push forward, were hurt by this and bore no responsibility for that. I feel really bad about that, and I feel really grateful for the support that my parents are still giving me, throughout all of this.
I bet.
Can you explain the real estate piece of this to us? I think there's been a number of headlines, as you know.
Hey, these are the good
FTX,
questions.
the company buying a lot of real estate up in the Bahamas, where you lived, at least at the time, was owned by the company. But then there's also reports that your parents signed.
He's shaking so bad. I think he's very nervous. Maybe he's not.
What seemed like a vacation home.
So I don't know the details
$120 million,
of
by the way, this
house,
home's.
For my parents, but I know that it was not intended to be their long-term property. I know it was intended to be the company's property. I don't know how that was papered, and I think that was where it was and will end up. I think they may have stayed there while working, with the company sometime over the last year. When you look at the rest of it, there were a lot of property purchases in the Bahamas. The reason for that is we had, 100, basically 100 Silicon Valley, top Silicon Valley employees come down here to work for FTX, and we were trying to incentivize that and to, make sure that they had an easy way to find a comfortable life, so that they'd be willing to move and help build out the product. And so, those 100 people put together here did end up, buying a substantial amount of property. And I feel bad about some of how those investments may turn out for them.
And he's still getting paid? They're all still getting paid, right?
To the idea of this company that, at least from the public perspective, seemed like a regulated company or something that was very focused on compliance. You would go to Washington, you talk about compliance, you talk about trust. Crypto ultimately is actually about trust. It's about not having to trust others, frankly. It's supposed to be a trustless system. That's why you trust trust it so much, supposedly. But it seems like when you read the stories, it sounds like a bunch of kids who are on Adderall having a sleepover party.
Oh, my day. Make sure you press that like button, guys. Let's get that up to 250 likes. Just press that button.
I screwed up. Like, I was CEO. I was the CEO of FTX. And
there we go. Press that button.
I would say this again and again, that means I had a responsibility. That means that I was responsible ultimately for us doing the right things. And I mean, we didn't. Like, we messed up big.
But there were people that were telling you needed more compliance, no?
There were, but I think that compliance, we were spending an enormous amount of our energy on compliance. We were spending an enormous amount of our energy on regulation, on licensure. We were getting licensed in dozens of jurisdictions. I think, frankly, we were spending probably too much of our energy getting licensed in retrospect. You know, there were some places where I think that the reporting and transparency obligations from that licensure actually did help. I think when you look at, I mean, FTX US derivatives, I think when you look at FTX Japan, which I think is fully solvent, which I think could make all customers whole tomorrow if it were, if, you know, the sort of relevant teams were to allow it to. I'm confused why it hasn't. But you know, I think that a lot of what we ended up doing and focusing on was a distraction to some extent from one unbelievably important area that we completely failed on, and that was risk. That was risk management. That was, you know, customer position risk, and, you know, frankly, conflict of interest risk. And
conflict of interest?
There was no person who was chiefly in charge of positional risk of customers on FTX. And that feels pretty embarrassing in retrospect, because that was, you go back to 2019, even 2018 asked me, why am I starting to build out FTX? What's the point of it? And what I would have said was, look, the existing crypto derivatives exchanges have large risk management failures, that every day there are millions of dollars that are being lost by customers because of risk management failures, that these contracts are paying out 75 cents on the dollar week after week after week because of risk management blowouts, and that needs to be overhauled. And that was what I was focused on for the beginning of FTX. I was not focused on that for the last year or two. I got less grounded from that, and I started focusing on the bigger picture, on you know, future business avenues, on.
But it didn't focus on the $10 billion gap, huh?
And I mean, we lost track of a really important part of the business and of the product.
Yeah.
And so there absolutely were management failures, huge management failures. I bear responsibility for that. There were oversight failures, transparency failures, reporting, like so many things we should have had in place. I think that a lot of it was on the risk management side.
Let me ask you about that, which is, we had Larry Fink here today, and he had a stake in FTX. And Sequoia and Paradigm and some very big venture capital firms had given you money. And I'm curious if they ever asked you questions about this risk management and whether they bear any responsibility for what clearly now appears, and you're saying, was at minimum a lack of oversight, if not something much worse.
Larry Fink had 24 million allocation, I believe.
I don't think they bear responsibility. I mean, like, when you look at, you put yourself in the eyes of an investor, of a venture capital firm. What you're thinking about primarily is upside, right? What you're thinking about primarily is investing in a private company and thinking, might this 3x, might this 5x, might this even 10x on the upside cases? And yeah, there's some chance that it will go down. There's some chance that maybe it will go down to zero, but that's counterbalanced by the upside propositions here. And so most of what they were focused on was, I think like, what might FTX become? What's the pathway to get from here to there? What would it take? What are the missing pieces? Rather than, at the point where you're dwelling on all of the various precise downside scenarios and risks for a prospective venture investment, that means you're not investing. Like, if that's where your head's at, if you think the odds are that that's where things are going to end up, why would you do that investment?
Can I ask you about the drugs? You have tweeted about it. Caroline has tweeted about it. Others have tweeted about uppers and downers and all sorts of things. There have been pictures taken of something called MSAM, which apparently increases levels of dopamine to the brain. It's actually for Parkinson's. Were you taking that? It's a patch.
So it's funny hearing this. I had my first sip of alcohol after my 21st birthday, and I think I have maybe half a glass of alcohol a year, roughly speaking.
Half a glass?
There were no wild parties here. When we had parties, we'd play board games, and 20% of people would have 3/4 of a beer each, or something like that. And the rest of us would not drink anything. I see any illegal drug use around me, at the office, at these parties, like, and when I say parties there, I mean like having people over for dinner is what that meant. And look, I can't talk about anyone else, like what they're prescribed between themselves and their doctors or psychiatrists. I can say for me, I don't know, like I've been prescribed various things at various times to help with focus and concentration. And I think they have done that. I haven't felt any of, the sort of impacts that I think people have been theorizing here from it. And it's not a huge impact, in the first place anyway. I think, these have all just been totally on-label use of medications. And, I think things that on the margin help me focus a little bit. I wish I had been a lot more focused over the last year.
I may have been unfocused in this last moment because I actually wanted to follow up on the question when we're talking about venture capitalists.
Yep.
Sequoia and Paradigm invested in you, but there have now been questions about the fact that you invested in them, and whether these were what some people describe in the business round-trip deals. Can you speak to that?
I mean, I think well after they had invested in FTX, and I don't know the details, but I think there may have been a small investment into some of their funds. I think it was something that we did because we believed in what they were doing. It seemed like a good opportunity, and didn't think too much about it.
I'm curious, just on a very personal level, as we get close to ending this conversation, to the degree that there's been a lesson in this, and that what you see as your future at this point. I know you're taking it day to day, obviously, and I know you're an optimist as well. We've talked about that.
Yeah.
But what do you think realistically is your future?
Make sure you press that like button, guys.
So, what is my future? I don't know what my far future is. And, when you fast forward, I have no idea what I'm going to be doing, a long time from now. I think when I look at the near and medium term, what am I thinking? What I'm thinking is, and again, I don't know what's going to happen, and a lot of it's not in my hands at this point. But I want to be helpful wherever I can to regulators.
Yeah. Do you guys think he's going to go to jail? Do you think he's actually going to go there?
To help FTX's customers, and I want to be helpful wherever I can on anything that could help bring a lot more value to those customers. And I don't know where that will lead. I can say that prior to filing, there had been a lot of interest in financing, a lot of fairly strong interest, many billions of dollars worth. I can't make any promises about anything, but I would have thought that there would be, a chance for a pathway forward here that would bring more value to customers than what would happen if you just sort of sold everything off for, for scraps.
Right.
And I don't have confidence. I can't promise you, I can't promise anyone anything there, and it's not really in my hands to a large extent. But I would think that it would make sense to be exploring that, because I think there's a chance that customers could end up made a lot more whole, I don't know, maybe even fully whole, if there was a really strong concerted effort.
How would that happen?
So, there have been examples of this before in crypto history where that happened. Obviously, you can look at what happened with Bitfinex back a number of years ago, where it got hacked and then ended up making, over a few year period, customers whole. There are a lot of assets that are on hand here, although many of them are not liquid. They were worth quite a bit more than the needed liabilities a month ago, even, let alone a year ago. There's at least a month ago, there were, or I guess, 3 weeks ago, billions of dollars of potential funding opportunities. I don't know that it would have been great for my stake as a shareholder of FTX, but that's not what matters here. And I think it would have brought more financing to customers. You saw, obviously, the Tron facility, which is open for a little while on FTX, which allowed some customers to get liquidity. You put some of these together. There's obviously, equity in the business. Where does that lead? I don't know exactly. And again, it's not going to be my, decision to make at the end of the day. But I think there's a shot for a real value.
Sam, we're going to have to wrap up. And a couple of just quick other questions. One is, given what you know about compliance or the lack of it in this business, in this industry, I think there are a lot of people who are holding crypto today, perhaps on exchanges like Binance and other places.
Yep.
What should they think, given what you do know, and to the extent that you can tell us the truth about what you know?
What should they think? And I presume you're asking, what should they think about the safety of their assets going forward? And
correct.
Yeah. So look, I obviously don't know exactly what's going on at other exchanges. I can tell you what I would think as a customer, if I were a customer here, which is look for the things that I wish FTX had been able to supply. Things like, proof of reserves is helpful. Look for as rigorous of that as you can. Look for regulatory reporting, right? You look at what the JFSA had in place in Japan. You look at what FTX US derivatives had with, sort of frequent reporting to regulators of exactly what, customer assets, balances, liabilities, distributions are.
What about the governance piece?
Yeah.
What about the governance piece? Because one of the things we have not talked about is you had no board and you had no CFO. And that should have been a red flag, frankly, for all of us.
Yeah.
So interestingly, in some ways, we had too many boards. We had...
Oh, goodness. Hopefully, we're going to get him back in
Going
just
dark.
a moment, if we can.
The lawyers
you
are
for indulging us. We are
should I
almost
turn down my microphone, by the way, guys?
Finished with this interview. Are we going to get him back?
The lawyers were like, "Stop talking! Turn
Hang
it
tight
down!"
just for 1 second, if we could. Can we try to bring Sam back, just to complete this interview? Thanks, everybody, for sticking with us. We are going to be back with Sam Bankman-Fried, I believe, in just literally a moment as they connect the feed. Sam, thank you for coming back.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
We were in the middle of the conversation about no board, no CFO, and you said something which I think raised a lot of eyebrows here. You
Don't
said
talk about
you thought you had
that,
too many
son.
boards.
Stop, please.
Yeah.
And he's like,
And can you hear me?
"There I
Good?
am."
Yep, we can all hear you.
Good? Yep, cool. So we didn't talk about much, but there is a board of FTX Japan, there's a board of FTX US derivatives, FTX Australia, FTX Singapore, FTX Europe. We had, I think, more than a dozen boards. When you look at all of the entities put together, and many of these boards had regulatory functions. I think the problem to some extent was, okay, sure, you have all these boards, but at the end of the day, when push comes to shove, who's the person who's in charge of global, or the board, or the function that's in charge of global site customer risk management? Like, there's a diffusion of responsibility to some extent on that front, and there needed to be, I think, a single or a small set of entities, whether of boards, people, of responsible parties that were sitting there saying, I feel responsible for what happens on FTX. And we had actually audited financials. From the FTX finances perspective, we had infrastructure, but from the customer risk and finances perspective, much less.
Sam, how much money do you have left at this point?
I mean, to my knowledge, like close to nothing. I mean, basically everything was just in the companies. I mean, it's...
You didn't put away some money somewhere?
No, I don't have any hidden funds here. Everything I have, I'm disclosing, and I'm down to I think I have one working credit card left. I think it might be $100,000 or something like that in that bank account.
That's not nothing.
And I mean, everything that I had, even all the loans I had were those, those are all things I was reinvesting in the businesses that I'd put everything I had into FTX.
I want to ask you two final questions. Were you truthful with us today?
Yes, of course I was.
I was as truthful as I'm knowledgeable to be. There's some things I wish I knew more about, but yes, I was.
Now, let me ask you this. Do you agree that over time you also lied?
Oh?
Do I agree that I lied?
Ha! The court's not going to love this one.
I don't know of times when I lied. I think, look, there are certainly times when I was acting as a representative, as a marketer for FTX, and when I was looking for how can I, in a way which is truthful, but paint FTX as compelling a way as possible, as exciting and optimistic a way as possible, and I wasn't thinking about, I wasn't talking about what are the risks involved with FTX, there. Right. I obviously wish that I'd spent more time dwelling on the downsides and less time thinking about the upsides.
Sam Bankman-Fried.
What is that?
Thank you.
What was that?
For this interview. I hope that some
Did you
of
lie?
the answers have been helpful as we've tried to understand and untangle what is a still tangled story. Sam,
what was that?
I know that this has been a difficult conversation and a tough conversation.
Well, I did portray FTX as something maybe better. Did you
public,
lie? Yes or no?
I want to thank you for engaging in it at a time in truth when I know you've been advised not to. So thank you so very, very much. Thank you.
What was that last question? Did you lie? Yes or no?
Everybody. Thank you.
Wow.
Before everybody goes, we have one last little surprise, and it's just to maybe put a smile on everybody's face and maybe make you think just a little bit. We are grateful to have FLS Plus here, Freestyle Love Supreme, for those of you who know it better that way, from Broadway.
Oh, I thought it was going to be something really interesting. Just before everybody goes, everybody, thank you all so much for tuning in. Make sure you press that like button, everybody, just to show some appreciation for me trying to... Guys, I've been searching for this for a little while to make it work. It took a long time to get this interview to work properly. Make sure you press the like button. It's greatly appreciated. And guys, I do a live stream every single day. Every single morning, I live stream crypto news and crypto cool stuff. So if you guys are into that, make sure you press that notification bell on. Or subscribe, whatever you guys want. But just make sure you have the notification bell on, because we've had multiple occasions where we make a juicy return on investment. So you guys want to be in for that. At the end of the day, this interview was actually wackier than I could have ever imagined. I think, honestly, a lot of you guys also did not, or were not fully prepared for the severity of what just happened. At least I can say I wasn't prepared for what just went down. The full story is portrayed right here. And again, there was actually about 30 minutes of conversation. I think about 30 minutes or so of conversation before I started this stream. And a lot of it is over on Twitter. We have a couple of clips that I want to quickly show you guys actually here. Sam Bankman-Fried is getting a light cross-examination at the New York Times DealBook Summit and has made at least 3 incriminating statements so far. Why are his lawyers or parents letting him do this? So let's quickly check this out.
That there is a much more closely connected version of FTX International and Alameda than previously understood. Fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, given the size of the position, I think it was, if not in intention, it was in effect tied together substantially more than I would have ever wanted it to be.
That there is a much...
That is one, but we have multiple. Let's quickly check this out. Justin Sam Bankman-Fried says FTX US is fully solvent and withdrawals could be opened up today.
Just to make a distinction here, you look at the U.S. platform, you look at the international platform. The U.S. platform, it's a U.S. regulated platform with American users. To my knowledge, that's fully solvent. That's fully funded. And, you know, I believe that withdrawals could be opened up today and everyone could be made whole from that none of these problems plagued the U.S. platform.
However, it is closed, and Sam Bankman-Fried keeps saying he regrets filing for bankruptcy. He also says he did not knowingly mix FTX customer funds with Alameda Research's funds. Another clip. Andrew Ross Sorkin reads a letter to Sam Bankman-Fried. Can you please, this is a person, can you please ask Sam Bankman-Fried why he decided to steal my life savings? And he responds to, yeah, I'm deeply sorry about that. Let me check it out. 1 minute.
One of the letters I got, I want to read to you, Sam, because it's from a gentleman who said that he lost his life savings. And the subject line is Sam Bankman-Fried stole $2 million from me. It says, Andrew, can you please ask SBF why he decided to steal my life savings and the $10 billion more from customers to give to his hedge fund, Alameda? Can you ask him why his hedge fund was leveraging long all of these S coins? I'm going to keep it polite for the kids. Please ask him if he thinks what happened was fraud. These are the kinds of letters that I've been getting repeatedly over the past several days. What do you tell this man?
Yeah. I mean, I'm deeply sorry about what happened.
One of the letters I got.
Fair enough. I mean, what else can he say as of this point, right? Has he said a lot of incriminating things? I'd say that's an understatement. That's very much an understatement. That is very much an understatement. He's not released any tweets thus far. I don't think he is going to release anything in the near future. At least I would not if I were him. Let's quickly see if there's anything updated. Anybody posting any clips? Just checking this out. Yeah, we've seen everything. There are a couple of things that I think were completely garbage. Then again, make sure you understand, I don't fully know, right? At the end of the day, all I can say is what I think and what I believe to be true. Like, for example, the fact that I don't personally buy. Again, sorry, my setup is a little bit weird. It's because I changed up my whatever. It doesn't matter. I personally can't fully believe that they drink only a quarter cup of alcohol every what exactly you're talking about, boy? You know what do you mean exactly with that? That doesn't make a lot of sense to me, and I don't believe that. Let's see if we can actually find the start of the interview somewhere. Because I think there were actually other people that might have actually streamed the whole thing. Well, there is this guy that actually has a fuller version than we actually had. It's this guy right here, Matt Kors. So if you guys are still looking for another place to watch it, I'm not so sure if we can actually watch it on the official New York Times place, if we can actually watch it back. This is the place where you could watch it live at the time. You can still maybe now watch that little concert if that's something you're interested in. Which I am not personally. But the whole rundown is below here still. That is for sure. Again, everything that's been known is written down. But
know what anyone else is thinking here. I can only talk about it from what I know, from what I knew. And a lot of this is reconstructing it over the last month. I have limited access to data, but what it seems like happened is in the middle of the year, a lot of, most of the borrow lending desks in the space blew out or closed down. And it seems like Alameda had, margin positions opened with them, and that it likely moved a bunch of that over to FTX this year when they shut down. And that means, I think it was over collateralized positions, but positions that involve substantial size and substantial US dollar size on the borrow side. In terms of the accounting mistake, again, looking through what happened, I think that there is a substantial discrepancy between what the financials were, what the audited financials were, the true financials, what the exchange understood. All of that was consistent, versus what the dashboards that we had displayed for Alameda's account there, which substantially under-displayed the size of that position. And so that's one of the reasons that I was surprised when we dug into everything at how big that position had become.
yeah, so again, I don't think there's any other place. What I have seen over on Twitter a lot, let's actually just watch the clips, I guess, that we have for right now.
And that means whatever happened, wherever it happened, I had a duty to all of our stakeholders, to our customers, our creditors. I had a duty to our employees, to our investors, and to the regulators in the world, to do right by them, to make sure the right things happened at the company. And clearly, I didn't do a good job of that. Clearly, I made a lot of mistakes or things I would give anything to be able to do over again. I didn't ever try to commit fraud on anyone. I was excited about the prospects of FTX a month ago. I saw it as a thriving, growing business. I was shocked by what happened this month. And, reconstructing it, where there are things I wish I had done differently.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we cannot know if he's lying about anything. It's just that some things of his story don't make a whole lot of sense. And one thing I've also seen is a recurring theme over on these articles is that people are saying he's literally thrown that woman. What's his name? Catherine. What's the girl's name again, guys? Catherine, I believe. They basically are saying that he's thrown Catherine in front of a bus, just like absolutely. There's no soft hitting piece surrounding it. It's just throwing her in front of a bus, and that's kind of cutting it lightly. Let's hear. Oh, here's actually Brian Sullivan who said it. In this interview, Bankman-Fried is throwing his former girlfriend Caroline Ellison and the Alameda hedge fund under many, many buses. Yeah. And so I wonder, maybe at the end of the day, it's not going to be Sam Bankman-Fried who's going to be seeing jail, but it's going to be somebody else. Maybe it's going to be Caroline for being irresponsible. But again, you guys got to understand this. You know what Sam Bankman-Fried puts as the main problem? He basically states we had a certain account that we thought belonged somewhere else. We basically had funds that were actually supposed to be for FTX users, but we thought it was actually an Alameda type of account because of some accounting issue 40 years ago, yada, yada, yada. Well, I guess he's honestly thinking that whatever he says right now, he's not going to go to jail. Otherwise, again, these lawyers are already speaking out saying this guy is saying so many things that are literally going to let him end up in jail if it ever gets that far. So he must either be completely convinced that he's in the right, there's just an honest mistake as a young entrepreneur, or he's fine with taking jail time for the mistakes which he's gone through, which is also pretty honorable in my opinion, or something along those lines. But that is absolutely wacky if you ask me, all right? All these lawyers have been saying it like crazy, and again, Sullivan has just said, hey, he's in front of a lot of buses. But I don't see it any other way right now. It's like, oh my days, this is crazy, guys. Oh, I also don't know. I'm also not sure if this guy's really speaking his heart or if all these questions were rehearsed up front and every single answer that he gave is just an automatic machine of all this stuff. Let's see here. The crowd erupted in applause as interviewer thanks Sam Bankman-Fried for coming on. What? This man is a psychopath criminal who just lied for an hour straight.
On behalf of everybody here and on behalf of the public, I want to thank you for engaging in it at a time, in truth, when I know you've been advised not to. So thank you so very, very much. Thank you.
At the end of the day, what does his appearance mean when indeed he's literally... Okay, again, I'm not sure, right? But what does it mean if he's lying everything? Because that basically means he's just given a little out where millions of people are only going to be seeing whatever he said. They're not going to be following the lawsuit and whatnot. And they just heard him say, oh, this and that, that's what's happened. I've been really honest. When asked the question, did you lie? He says, well, I mean, I did represent some things differently than they exactly were. It's like a yes or no question. It's not a, hey, did you maybe at some point, Mr. He says, did you lie at some point? You should have said, yes, I did, because everybody in the world does sometimes lie. The question is, how important was it? And I guess he does a little small answer of trying to explain, like, oh, well, it wasn't that important. I just misrepresented FTX to some people. But it's still kind of wacky if he doesn't end up behind bars for some of the things which he's caused. Oh, this is going to be an interesting next couple of days. Oh, my days. This is going to be interesting. This is going